All right, welcome everybody back to Based on Characters. This is Ray, and I have a guest for you today. He's going to be somebody that's going to be very interesting because he makes interesting stories. He tells a great story, he's well spoken, and someone I've known and liked for a long time. And this is one of the reasons why I created this channel because it was geared around writing. As people know me, and people who know me from my past, people know me from my future, I'll talk about writing. I'll talk about characters. So he is going to explain himself to you on the things that interested him into writing, the things that he writes about, the things that he's very interested in. And he's going to get into some really insightful things. And I think you're going to have a wonderful time speaking to my friend, fellow writer, and just all around great guy. So when he is ready, I'm going to get to him. And like I said before, and people who know me, this is an organic channel. There's no telling what you're gonna get. It's not scripted. It's more so from the heart. When I talk to you, it's from the heart, and that's what he's gonna do. So if my guest is getting himself ready, and when he gets ready, he's going to explode with the things that he knows the most about. So it is on you, my friend.
All right. I can't wait to meet this guy. Let's bring him in. Yeah. It's incredible introduction. Gotta meet that guy or girl or whoever they are, non-binary person. But no, seriously, I am Sergio Raymond Rodriguez. That is my government name. Now, I think you got me on here as Sergio Ray Rodrigo. I go by Serge sometimes. Sometimes Sergio is very complicated to pronounce. So I do go by, Serge sometimes. Um, in my links for my author page, I am Sir Reina Lucio. Sir is in Sir Galahad. Reina is in Queen, Espanol. And Rodrigo is a mixture of my last name Rodriguez and my long lost disabled sister Guadalupe, also known as Lulu. So
Okay.
Lucio, Lulu, Rodriguez, Rodrigo,
Okay.
Sergio. I just kind of meshed it over many years because I
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to. My sister Lulu is going to come up probably a lot during a lot of this explanation. So key person Lulu, my disabled sister.
Okay.
I'll point out other key people, places, and so on to try to keep up. It gets complicated.
Okay. All right. So I got a question for you, and it's basically a basic question. How did it all start for you? Like, where you from, and how you became your charismatic self?
Ah, okay. Well, I would love to say the Dark Lord came down and cast a spell on a pile of mud, and then, somehow I ended up becoming this immortal being that's been around for 25,000 years now. It's nothing that interesting or cool, but Sergio Raymond Rodriguez was born on August 27th, 1984. So I'm almost 40.
Mm.
Yeah. I shaved the head to fool you. Renard does the same thing. Thank you, Renard.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Can't guess our age, huh?
Uh,
So August 27, 1984. So that makes me an old millennial. And I was born in Gary, Indiana, which
GI. Yes,
you got it.
sir. That's where half my family's from. Yeah.
Whew, I'm sorry. And congratulations, they survived. Now, for some of you younger Gen Zers, maybe you might not know much about Gary. It is best known for four things. It was the birthplace of the Jackson Five. You all know that boogeyman Michael Jackson? Yes. They're older than me, so I didn't know them, obviously. So that's one. Two, it is known specifically also for the Music Man, Gary, Indiana, Indiana. I'm not going to sing no more. Last time.
Come on.
Uh,
Come on. Bring it.
oh, I'm out the South. I moved out of Music City. I'm coming at you from Mesa, Arizona right now. So, Gary, Indiana, if you're Broadway musical people, be Music Man. Four, the third thing, steel mills. Albert H. Gary founded the city about 130 some years ago. He was a
Hmm.
contemporary of Rockefeller, Carnegie, and them. So, what happened to Gary, Indiana, is that it was a steel city by and far. It could have been almost as big as some like Chicago or Detroit, maybe. But of course, this is the fourth thing. about the time Michael Jackson and his brothers and sisters left in the late 70s ish. The steel industry started crashing throughout the 80s. Those of you who know your history, it didn't do too well. And Gary, Indiana went from a city of 180 some thousand people at its absolute peak to currently about 63,000 people.
Hmm.
It is like a coal mining town. When the coal mining industry starts to tank, then everything else goes. And Gary, when I was growing up there in the 1990s, was known as the murder capital of the world. Now, this was on paper, of course, place like Tijuana, people just go disappear. They disappear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Places in Russia, don't want to mess with Russia,
Yeah.
But we're talking that statistic in the 90s was based upon dead bodies found, forensic scientists claim was a murder, and murderer found and convicted. So that's why it's so like, well, why such a small city had so many murders. I didn't realize, and it did have a lot. Don't get me wrong. By the time I was in high school, which I went to high school in Maryville High School, an adjacent town that was a bit safer.
Hmm.
I knew 6 kids that were murdered. I didn't know that was out of the ordinary. I had to get to college, and they're just like, dude, you actually know somebody who was? Yeah, there's people in my family. Now, it's almost kind of like an extension of the South Side Chicago, because even though it's the South Side and it's rough, Chirac and stuff, um, you know, taxes are more in Illinois. So a lot of people will come over to Indiana to live, but work more in Illinois for more money. So a lot of us did that. My father was a steel worker for 34 years, and my mother was mostly a homemaker. She not really homemaker because my sister was disabled, as I mentioned Lulu before. So she
Yeah.
stuck around the house a lot because Lulu had a lot, always going to the hospital, had a lot of behavior, angry issues. She was a itty bitty person, but don't cross her. No. And I am Mexican and Puerto Rican. That can be vital to this because it does come through in my work a bit. My father was Puerto Rican. Think he pretty much like kind of looked and sounded like Renard, but he spoke Spanish, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's one of them." Like, yeah,
Wow.
is he Dominican or something? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'll admit he's a few shades lighter, but. And then my mother was like a white woman that spoke Spanish. Cause she'll come up in like Crown Point, Indiana. It's like, oh my God, Elia. And then and then she'll start speaking Spanish. So when they walk down the street, they look like a black and white couple. But then they both start
Hmm.
speaking Espanol. And then so everybody's like, how did that happen? I was like, I don't know. My dad saw the Rocky movies one too many times and flexed in front of my mother in high school. I don't know what happened. All I know is that
Hmm.
they were fortunate enough to have my 2 older sisters and my older sister Adrian. Hey, she'll watch this, and the youngest being me. I came along 3 years after my middle sister Lulu. I was an accident, a complete utter accident. My mother had her tubes tied, and of course they didn't know you had to burn them back then. So they untied like a shoelace, and my father said I had to go in there and make me a man. I'm like, all right, Dad, just enough of that. So I am a wonderful cosmic accident for a Mexican Puerto Rican family from the murder capital of the world in the 90s. And me and Renard know each other from my time in Nashville. I spent 9 years from 2011. No, 2000, late 2010 up until about 4 years ago, basically. So, how does all this shape how I became a writer? Because the
Hmm.
question you initially asked was, how'd you become a writer? You want to ask it again? It's all good.
No, no, you got it. Take it.
Okay. I had to give you some demographic bullet point issues. Okay. I have 4 anecdotes. They're not long. Well, 2 of them are kind of long. The other 2 are kind of like what happened there because I wasn't there. My older sister, Adrian, claims, who is 4 years older than me. I'm 39, so she's 43. I'm sorry, Adrian. I just outed your age to all your friends. But it's okay. We all know you're old. She has a number of stories of me being creative just from the womb, practically. One day I came home wrapped in a blanket. So I'd be putting on planes, making planes and hanging them from the staircase and stuff. And people would come up the stairs and whack their face on it. I was an interesting toddler. I would sneak out of the crib that me and my sister Lulu were in, even though she was 3 years older than me. We still had the same like cognitive functioning because she was trisomy 17. Think Down syndrome, but with much, much worse symptoms. Remember, key
Hmm.
person, Lulu. So she wasn't supposed to survive. still to this day, she's still not supposed to survive, but yet she continues. So I was able to escape the crib by climbing up the desk, undo the crib so she can get out, get over another dresser and over the baby gate for our little nursery, undo that gate, let her out, get all the way up them stairs that I was talking about, and get those planes I used to make, hang them from there. Mom and dad will get up and conk their face on them, and then I would go all the way downstairs. I figured out how to undo the back porch because we had this puppy that was a Alaskan Malamute, and she'd come over there and wreck the house. She didn't know no better. Open the fridge, take out some cheese, make some cracker stuff. This is all before preschool. I remember most of doing this, to be fair. But my sister Adrian, she's just like, nobody knew what to do with you. They're like, there's no good reason a toddler should be doing all that. And I always say in retrospect that I didn't want to be alone in my crime because I'd let Lulu out. Now, she didn't have the motor functions to get down the stairs. She just crawled around upstairs. So I always say she was my first friend. Most people, they're close with their mother, and I was when I was really little. And Lulu was the first person they put me in a crib with. She was my first friend, which made her at that time my best friend. She was my first best friend. Everything I've ever written has everything to do with her and disability studies. So that's the first of the stories. Secondly, what happened, of course, where 9/11. I have been a writer since September 12th, 2001. The day after 9/11. That's no coincidence. I was supposed to go to the Marines like my father.
Okay.
And be the man's man, Well, and I was going to go to the Air Force because he's like, that's where the pretty boys go, the smart boys go, same thing, whatever. You go to the Air Force, man, So I had a signed letter of like intent or something. I forgot. If military people are watching, feel free to correct me. I appreciate it. And what happened was that I had gotten locked up in a residential placement, which for old timers, it's like Boys Town, Bad Boys or whatever. For youngsters, it's like, you go to the psych ward sometimes. It's really common, Me and my dad had got into a brawl a few months before 9/11, and he almost beat me to death. So what happened was that I got removed from my home by the state of Indiana. That is what part of your state taxes do pay for, is to get kids out of abusive situations. I didn't mean to go so hard and dark so soon, but it did happen, So, and what happened was that I got into St. Francis, residential placement for troubled orphan kids or whatever. I was 16. And then at that moment, a few weeks leading up to 9/11, I was reading the complete works of Shakespeare by myself. One of the staff members had the complete book and said, "Hey, I think you can handle this." I said, "Sure." Well, I was in the middle of it anyway. And I was in the middle of Hamlet, that wonderful, boring story that many people get forced to read. Monique could be like, "Oh, you liked those?" I was like, "I always loved it. I always love all that stuff." And I was reading about Hamlet when his uncle Claudius was watching a play that Hamlet had set up that mimicked Uncle Claudius killing Hamlet's father, which did happen. And Uncle Claudius got real, "Oh man, I'm watching a play about what I did." And I'm thinking, like, Hamlet, it's so obvious your uncle killed your father. Spoiler alert. Sorry, people. Why do you need a play to get him to feel something and guilt? He's like, "Oh yes, he stirs." I'm like, Hamlet, you're a smart guy, but you're an idiot. Sounds familiar, by the way. So I was like, could it be that story has power? Story has so much power that Hamlet knew that if he made a play out of his uncle's evil, murderous crimes, that he can prove guilt, he can prove intent, he can make it live longer than just the crime in and of itself. I was reading at that time, I was reading it while planes crashed into the World Trade Center and into the Pentagon. I wrote everything back then, and I thought I didn't know what I was good at or what I liked. I was just going to go be a soldier off somewhere, and I'm thinking, like, I think we're about to go to war because of that 9/11 thing. Maybe I don't want to go to the Air Force. I don't want to die this young. When, with all due respect to the people who did and did go to the military, Both my grandfathers fought in World War II, and my father was a Marine, so that they fought so that their descendants didn't have to. So I didn't have to fight in that way. But the pen is truly are mightier than the sword. The keyboard is mightier than the nuke. Oppenheimer fans, feel free to disagree. So I said that is power. That is power my father doesn't understand. He tore up the first short story I ever did. Said, you're wasting your time. Go to the military and be a man. Be an electrician. Do something that you could support a wife and children with. And those are all very honorable traits. My response was, well, Dad, you're so happy with me and our family, aren't you? Your decisions, huh? He didn't like that. Like I said, he didn't ever need to know what to do with me. Just like when I was a baby, the toddler didn't know what to do with me. As a teenager, nope. Because he wasn't happy. He was not a happy man. I think maybe he thinks he married my mom as a wrong person or something, or I don't know. And it's not about him. It's about my writing and you all's writing here.
Okay.
If you want to peg me off, write me off as one of those people that's kind of, he's just mad and bitter at daddy. So he got daddy issues. So he's writing. Sure, why not? Shakespeare had daddy issues. He owed massive amounts of debt because his father. That's why he had to make so many bad plays. And most his good ones are good. But man, he made so many of them. He's like Vince McMahon or Walt Disney, He has so much out that the ones that we keep hearing about are really good, are very, very good. They really are some of the greatest things of all time. But a lot of the stuff he just wrote to get a paycheck. He was paying off his daddy's debt, So he had reason to be bitter. And when his son Hamnet died in real life, when he was 11, Hamnet, who knows what would have happened to Shakespeare. We don't know that much about him. He's enigmatic. He's charismatic, maybe. Some people think he doesn't exist, and that's fine. There's more evidence to say that Shakespeare did exist. But yes, so Shakespeare, 9/11. So I think those were two of the anecdotes. The final-ish one, I'd say, because the last one's kind of an epilogue, maybe, is February 11th, 2011 was the next milestone. And Renard, you would have met me shortly after that, like maybe about a year or two. And that's when I was in Nashville. February 11th, 2011. Let me back up a little bit. Well, I'll start with the February 11th. My parents and my sister Lulu, that was the last time I saw those three members of my family. Me and Adrian still love each other very much. My oldest sister, we talk and so on. So what happened was that my parents banned me and Adrian from seeing our sister Lulu because my mother's exact words on February 11th, 2011 was, we have to do right by God. And I'm like, she's like, you don't have any faith. And I said, I have faith. I've always followed every single law of the United States of America, for starters. Not everything in the good holy book, I'll admit, but that not everything in the holy book is law in the United States law. I've never been arrested. I've never been on drugs or nothing like that. I never quit alcohol. I wasn't even a massive alcoholic. I've never gotten anybody pregnant as far as I know. Just I'm a law-abiding United States citizen is what I can guarantee anyone. I work with children right now with tutoring and so on, special needs kids.
Okay.
So I meet all the criteria for that and so on. So this is something I thought about for the past 13 years. Why my mother didn't want to deal with me or Adrian, and why they cut us off from Lulu. So I started writing about that. That's where Roachkind came in. Roachkind, I wrote that about the time. It took me about a year. That first year when my parents weren't talking to me, and I got really bitter. I understand a lot of people, they're estranged from their parents. It's almost kind of the norm, but the bitter part was they had to take Lulu with them. Lulu, she can't talk. She has the mental capacity of a 7 to 11-year-old, depending on the task. She was in a wheelchair growing up. She wore diapers, she was continent, and she was very severely, profoundly disabled, mentally and physically and intellectually disabled, you see. So about 7 or 8 years, it's 2008, I think, is my sister had gotten burned in a group home. It was water that was dumped on her somehow by accident, on purpose. We don't know still. And it was in Maryville, Indiana. I remember I got in the call. I was in the dormitories, and it was rough. She was in the hospital for 8 months, third-degree burns over a third of her body. So she went to Chicago Rush. She was in a burn ward for a long time. Well, I'd say a day is too long to be in those places, because going in those kind of places is, man, you never forget. Freddy Krueger, like that monster dude from the movies, the makeup on his is done very well, because people do really look like that when they get burned. And this is something I think that my parents took very, very hard. Harder than me, harder than Adrian. We weren't even there, but as parents, and I wouldn't know this because I'm not a parent, but some of you parents out there, they feel like they let her be in a vulnerable situation with that group home. And they just got really paranoid after that. So they had many years they were in suing the group home company, Impact, and they won, I heard, $80 million. It's definitely 8 figures is what I know, that much. And after that, they'd always been very devout, good Christian kind of people-ish or whatever, despite my dad almost beating me to death in high school. But they already had Jesus, but they found like super Jesus when they got all that money. People are like, oh, that's real convenient. Astute observation. So coincidence, somebody finds super Jesus after they get multi-millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden they start cutting people off and they don't want to deal with nobody,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, So it took them a few years from 2008 until February 2011, when I just moved to Nashville, to cut me and Adrian off. And then I knew then, because I had my literature degree, I have 2 bachelor's degrees in literature and writing, both in English. My parents always wanted them to not have the challenges they did, because they didn't speak good English. I'm the best person I know at the English language by far. Like a lot of sometimes I just got to just nod and they're over explaining how to use an adjective to me. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, it's like mansplaining exists, but man, over explaining the English language to a Hispanic person is it's humiliating. I have to get over it. I do get over it, because that's the way of the world at the moment. It ain't right, sure, but this is why I write. So I had to deal with that. And February 11th, my mother said, no, Sergio, never going to see you again. I have not talked or spoken of her since. And it's been 13 years now. So that's when you met me, Renard. Shortly after then, Monique Gooch also met me. Ron Harris, if you're listening, man. Maybe like Nikki Nelson Hicks, Ashley Roth, Christine Hall, some other poets and people that I know. Hopefully you all appreciate this too, the call out.
They'll see this.
Okay, good. And I was on a mission completely to reinvent the wheel with literature back then, because I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to die so bad. I was so suicidal. I was drinking way too much then. And I didn't have an alcohol problem before then, but then after my parents cut me off, go figure, I started self-medicating. All those wonderful bad Hemingway cliches you read about. And I didn't even serve in World War I. Just Gary, Indiana, right? So what happened was that Roach Kind, I had thought of the idea a few years before my parents cut us off with my friend Gustavo Del Rio. Yeah, he'll listen to this. He's got wonderful kids and everything. He's a good father, and he's my age, but he's still kind of a role model of mine. But we were just drinking one day in his mom's basement, and I was talking about, what about a world with walking, talking cockroaches? And it's like Planet of the Apes, but with cockroaches. He just thinks I'm talking out of my rear end, because he's like, man, he's drunk. No, I remembered that. I wasn't that drunk. And I'd written the idea down throughout college, and I was kind of adding to it here or there. I'd started another novel about some guys graduated from high school and trying to solve their problems, but they weren't roaches. When my parents were gone and they took Lulu, I said, these are my guys, my characters from some high school friends, Ryan Marlowe, Tim Gus, Zerubbabel Lewis, Greg Jeter, Crystal Catania. Sorry about the government name, Lewis. And I decided to take them basically and put them in the setting and make them walking, talking cockroaches and put them into this Roach Kind world. That is when, I'll admit, I would stay up so many nights. The Grand Ole Opry, I worked there at the hotel.
Hmm.
I'd come home at midnight and I'd write all night, maybe sleep an hour tops and go right back to work. I did this for almost a year. I would not recommend any of you aspiring writers or current writers to try that, but it was better than going to sleep because I was having night terrors. I was self-harming at that time a bit. Like I said, I was self-medicating a lot with liquor, and I had to get the biggest outlet that I've ever gotten. I had to block out everything from my father telling me that writing's nothing, get a man's job, or whatever. Sexist piece of crap, but it's just like I had to distract myself, but I put every last ounce of pain and suffering that I had from losing not just my parents, but more so Lulu, because I told you, that was my best friend.
Yeah.
And I put everything that she is or was and will be, and to a certain extent, people like her, into Roach Kind. The Roach allegory is a symbol for disability. That is where the heavy symbolism of the cockroach comes from. And, we got Spider-Man, we got Batman. People are afraid of spiders and bats, by the way, but they'll watch them some Spider-Man and some Batman. So I was like, why not Cockroach Man? Why not Captain Cockroach? Make it gender neutral, like Capitón el Cucaracha, but just, expand that metaphor, And that's about when you met me, Renard. I'm pretty sure I was writing Roach Kind when you went to the
I
Hermitage.
do. I
Yeah.
remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that in Writers Group.
Remember it, yeah. And that was bad. That's just the third anecdote there. But I think that the rest of the fourth anecdote revolves around probably me going here to Arizona, because I wrote those 5 books basically when I was in Nashville for 9 years, and I only published one, Silverwater, which is, if you click on the link for Roach Kind, Silverwater will come up in, as a suggestions for it. And that's just my lame commercial novel that I wanted to make sure, I got a lame hetero romance. They're not cockroaches. There's no cockroaches in there. It's more normal. Silverwater's fine. It has a nice redemptive, kind of feel to it, But I wrote that years after I wrote Roach Kind, as just to prove to myself that I can write something kind of normal. And there's nothing wrong with anybody like, hey, I like that Silverwater better than those cockroaches. That's fine, or you just don't like any of my work, whatever. But that was, So once I got here to Arizona, the first couple of years in the pandemic from 2020 to 2021, I published 4 more books because I had written a prequel to Roach Kind called Wing, which is my weird redheaded stepchild. And then the past couple of years, last year in January, I collected all my poetry, mostly from Christine Hall's Poetry at the Brew, and Sarah's Writer's Wart, and some online poetry I did, and I just collected it all into anthology. That's the little secret, when you don't have a novel idea, put together an anthology. Oh yeah, here you go. The year before that was my short story anthology, SS Anthology. I highly recommend that one to anybody who wants to ease into some of my work, because there's all genres in there. Nancy Sleem, may she rest in peace. Renard, you knew her. She was, she was a good person. Yeah, she really helped me be able to understand that I can write in every genre. She believed in me that I was that good, and I know I sound very braggadocious a lot of times, and I'll joke sometimes I'm a god of literature. But, that's just more, that character you have to have for the people. Sometimes you have to be this, elaborate thing. That's where the Serge name comes from, Oh, no, there's Sergio, me, but then there's Serge. That's the one you're talking to in the interviews most of the time. So
I like Serge.
Yes. Serge is a part of me, to be fair. It's not like, oh man, this guy's just nuts, lock him up. But been there, done that. Remember St. Francis in high school? Yeah. This guy needs his ass whooped. Okay, yeah, I've been there, done. I had that happen too. You need Jesus? Yeah, I've had quite a bit. I've had 8 different religions I've practically converted to, just Jew, Muslim, Buddhism, Shinto, Baha'i. I've done a lot of faith hopping. I was an atheist twice. No longer. Atheism is just another religion. So they don't like to hear that. Sorry, atheists. But the only difference between an atheist and a theist is one believes that there is an all-knowing, all-powerful, and/or creator, or multiple ones, and the other one says, no, there's not. That's it. There ain't no difference in intelligence, ethics and morality. Half the people of faith they commit so many sins so many times. Like my parents, and You know, a lot of atheist people. Look at Russia. You know, that's state implied atheism right there, and they still do horrible things against humanity. So, roach kind, a lot of that is in there. I have a lot of kind of like people who fight over the pettiest things in roach kind is what I can say. Everything that the roaches find in antiquity comes from us. And they have like, they'll find like a football stadium for the Tennessee Titans. And guess what? They think we worship football players. They think that humans, those humans, wow, that was 2,500 years ago. They must have really thought these football players were gods, and they think they're gods. There's also a minority portion of roach kind that believes that people with disabilities in our human time were gods. But because it's like, well, they're the ones who get special handicap plates and spots, and they get to go to Make-A-Wish and stuff like that or whatever, you know, they get to be around these football players, and these football players are catering to them. So maybe the people in the wheelchairs and so on, and maybe they were gods. You see, there's a lot of purposeful misunderstandings and misinterpretations like that throughout roach kind. My friend Frederick Hayes, well, excuse me, Grand Marquis. Yes, we did a Omari Boyd documentary together, and he said it was, you know, he once kind of jokingly said it was like kind of like walking around like you're just an alien sometimes. I was like, yeah, you're right. Sometimes I do. You ever seen Third Rock from the Sun? It was an old 90s sitcom where John Lithgow and his family and so on, they were actual aliens. And well, I don't know why people do this. Like, that's me, like almost all the time. I'm just like rubbing, I got the bald head now too. He's so excitedly fascinated by humankind and Earth and existence, but he is so utterly frustrated by it. The simplest things he doesn't understand sometimes, and I always wondered sometimes if I'm maybe on the autism spectrum. I have 9 other diagnoses, but not autism. I have all this other stuff though, and I just get very like, what happened to everybody and anything? There's very little inside the box and status quo that I other than just obeying the law. Don't get in jail, don't get yourself murdered, and don't murder nobody, don't be raping, and don't, you know, don't be accepting of that kind of stuff. But other than that, as far as social norms, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with just most of humanity that I come across. If anything, I get very bored very easily. So I start thinking of my own things, and that's where the creativity comes from sometimes, is trying to think away from all the historic generational trauma that my parents continued on into me and my sisters, and also thinking creatively away from boredom sometimes. Oh man, especially here in Arizona, I kind of miss the Nashville in the South, because it's just like it got some crazy tractor pull stories or something, man. Those are fun, you know, or like them tornado stories that come around. They blew my grandmother's skirt off and everybody saw, like, hey, like, I didn't know it happened in the middle of Tennessee, but that makes a good story though. Man, Arizona's a little more like, oh my God, we went skydiving, and, you know, we just, I always hate skydiving. It's always just, you know, what you know, property that they're going to buy up and crap. And, you know, and it's a very like, if you see a commercial to do something fun on YouTube or Facebook or something like that, I guarantee you 90% of people in Arizona are either trying to do that or having done it and showed you pictures of it on Instagram. And I'm like, then I start talking about talking cockroaches, and I just get like, and then the other person's like, well, that's a very interesting take on life, Sergio. And I'm like, I get afraid to talk about my own work. So thank you, Renard, for having me, of course, you know, because then and then they start wondering, where did that come from? What kind of life, what kind of childhood did you have? And I'm like, you know what? Nah, I grew up in the suburbs with a white picket fence, perfect, just Wonder Bread sandwiches, all that. No, of course I went through weird, messed up stuff that made me write about walking, talking cockroaches. I mean, I get fascinated by people who have very boring, dull lives, but yet they have such weird writing. I'm like, whoa. Like, I get fascinated by them, but, you know.
This is for my audience. I told y'all this will be a very interesting interview. No shorts. He's gonna spit it just how he thinks it, and he has a lot to say. But I want to ask you a question here about let me ask you a question of future writing project. Let's go and Is there a future writing project that you're either currently working on or want to work on?
Yes, currently I'm writing a story that I'm calling Final X, only because I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and X-Men 97 is incredible on Disney Plus. So I was like, how do I combine those two? So Final Fantasy, X-Men, Final X. It sounds cool, but ultimately, what it has to do with the story, I don't know. The story is about a former student of mine when I was teaching special ed at a school out here in Arizona. I won't say his name directly, but he'll know when I'm talking about him. So we're talking about his great, well, it wasn't great life so far, but he's was such an influence on me, and I taught him pretty much every subject outside of maybe chemistry and geometry is where I stopped short of because I don't know science. I love science and math, but I'm bad at them, especially math. I taught him everything else: English, reading, writing, stuff like that, and government, economics, history, especially a lot of history, a lot of Viking history. What he taught me was so much more. I didn't have to be this guy that was drinking himself into an early grave, even though I had already quit. But still, it was just him being him. And he's about 80% blind, and he is on the autism spectrum. And he beat the brakes off this kid in the public high school because, yeah, the kid had it coming. He'll like that. But
Mhm.
that's what a lot of people do. They teach their kids to bully people who with the
Yeah.
blindness and an autism and an illness like that. It's garbage, man. It's garbage. I almost can't talk about it so much without cussing up a storm too much. But
Hmm.
and you know what, and my student, he's the one who took all the fall for that. They came after him and punished him and said, "Oh, it wasn't no fair fight." Like you're picking on a mostly blind guy for starters, who didn't know that he had a wonderful older brother that taught him how to defend himself. And I told him
Yeah.
I was one of the first, I think, teachers to maybe say like, yeah, this is important for you to know how to defend yourself because you're a blind young man with autism, and there are still people like who harmed my sister and burned her, even if it is by accident, who will target people like him. It's up to him, on where he's going to stop with that beatdown sometimes. But, my father taught me how to defend myself. And I think that's everyone, man, woman, child, non binary, whatever, should learn how to defend themselves. This almost sounds like a gun right thing, but no, but I'll save that one for later. But to know if you're physically and mentally and emotionally can to be able to do that. See, I'm not always just the pen is mightier than the sword. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes the sword is there, and I think that comes off in my writing, especially because it can be very action packed. It can be very uncomfortable, very R rated, and that's fine. Not NC-17 rated. I'm not a shock jock person. I'm not Chuck Palahniuk in Fight Club. I'm not Howard Stern. Monique may disagree. It's like you just be saying stuff to rile people up, like sometimes. So
You know I'm gonna ask Monique about this.
yeah. So yeah, so
uh,
I don't know if that fully answered the question like that, but that is
it
my
did.
current one. I'm writing a lot about my student, and I wrote myself into there, and they're just trying to escape the Civil War Part Two. No relation to the movie that just came out with A24, but and they pick up some companions. It's a travel road trip. They're trying to get from roughly Arizona up to the Pacific Northeast, and they got some people after them and so on. It's only about 17 pages, 18 pages long right now.
Okay.
So it might just be a short story. It might be a novel. I don't know. But I've been writing it a lot the past couple months, almost every day. So I'm pretty proud of that Final X. I might keep the title, but I'm going to have to figure out what Final X means to this story and what it means, what it could mean for the audience. So any suggestions, let me know. It's a wrestling tournament, I know. To get into the Olympics, it's the Final X tournament. I was like, interesting. Maybe I can work that in. I don't know yet. So
I
future
know you
project.
could. Your mind's strong enough. You can definitely work anything in. I'm sure. I'm sure you can figure out something. But let me ask you this here. Since I'm based on characters here, I try to ask all my guests a favorite character of them, of that inspired them, that they love to read about, maybe from a movie, maybe from a book. So, can you tell the audience about a favorite character of yours?
Hmm. I will talk about the ultimate favorite character, going back to Lulu again. Key character. Lulu and I were very big Winnie the Pooh fans in the 1980s. Those old shorts that they came out with Walt Disney from like the 60s and the 70s, Blustery Day and so on, and House on Pooh Corner, I think. And particularly, I had Eeyore a lot. Not just because, oh, you're so mopey. Yes, I am sometimes. All right, let me be. But Eeyore's birthday, where they had forgot his birthday, legitimately. And then eventually, I think Pooh gets him a jar of honey that he had laying around. Piglet gets him a balloon, nice little red balloon. So, of course, Pooh, being the hungry bear that he is walking to, Eeyore's place to give him the gift. He gets hungry because he's walking and eats the honey. Empty pot. Nice Pooh. Piglet, running, stammering, and, nervous, pops the balloon. Gives him a pop balloon. They give the empty honey pot and the pop balloon to Eeyore, and we're really sorry, but Eeyore takes that pop balloon and he puts it in the empty honey pot. And Eeyore, for the first time in any of the Pooh stories, and this is true even of A.A. Milne's original book, which is like very gospel to me, is the happiest he's ever been. And that character of probably Eeyore combined with, of course, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and the other characters inspired every single character. Think walking, talking bear, walking, talking pig, walking, talking donkey, walking, talking cockroaches. And they anthropomorphize a lot of different concepts in Winnie the Pooh. A.A. Milne was actually a very brilliant man, but he was only known for his fun kid stuff. He was a serious academic scholar, served in World War II, very scarred, mentally, emotionally, all of that. Very distant from Christopher Robin. Somebody who know that story. There's a good Ewan McGregor movie. I forgot the name of it, but it's a Disney one. It's about Christopher Robin. And I guess in some ways, like Christopher Robin too, is a very big character for me also, because I always felt like that kid whose father and parents were very distant. And even though I wasn't a rich white boy from, London or England overall, just having to escape to that world. And Winnie the Pooh is the first allegory, and I don't know if A.A. Milne intended this, of disability communal studies. And that if you look at Pooh and Piglet with the popped balloon and the empty honey pot, those are two things that we think are supposed to function the way they're supposed to function, with honey in it, with air in it. But when those things are taken out, they still have function when you put them together. And that is, in some ways, how I've said how me and my sister Lulu are. And some of my other special needs students, that when we lose that parts of us, air, honey, doesn't matter, figuratively, love, life, all that stuff, we sometimes will gravitate with people who are, missing something that we have too. And that's why Winnie the Pooh and all those characters in there are my characters by far. That and Batman. Let's see.
Can't go wrong, Batman. I see you. I see you. I
Cockroach
like
Man.
that.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's do this here. I want to get into one other thing. I feel like it's a topic that you can definitely, talk about and explore here. Maybe you can put this in your writing. So, as we see the world today, and it's been a question, and they talked about the year 2024 being the year of the dragon in some aspects,
Yeah.
the year of exposure in other aspects. So, in your expertise, what you know and what you read, what do you think about the year 2024? What is it when it ends? What do you think it's really going to represent? Is it going to be the exposure? Is it going to be the dragon? Or going to be a combination of so many things?
I'll admit, I went to a Year of the Dragon festival about 3 months ago here in Arizona. It was by accident because we were just going to the Asiana Korean market that was there, and they happened to have this plaza with songs and dancing and everything. So I was under the impression that it was going to be a good year for the dragon. I'm a Year of the Rat person myself, 84. But as far as like what it meant to them culturally, I don't fully know completely, but what it meant to me, I think, of being done with this year. I mean, I need a new job, bad for starters, for me personally. But for the overall collective consciousness of the world, I'm thinking that we're still living in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm not here to argue or take sides or
Okay.
expose conspiracy as far as like what was should or shouldn't have happened the past 4 years. But I think that infrastructure is crumbling more and more now, thanks to the pandemic, and maybe even thanks to a little outside influence here or there. Like, you can't like just get up in the morning without having, a light goes off, then you go to the bathroom and the toilet doesn't work, then you start your car and that doesn't work, and then you call up the mechanic to get that fixed, and oh yeah, we're not going to have that for another month, that part. And then you get on over there to work, and then all of a sudden, the paper's out again. Like, all these little things keep happening. Maybe I'm just have bad Peter Parker Miles Morales luck, but I'm not the
Mhm.
only one. I've known like 6 or 7 or 8 people in the past 8 months that lost their jobs. I know two or three people that actually just straight up quit. They had the finance like that. They're like, this is done. And they're all saying very similar things, including even like some people like Ron Harris, Monique, and so on. Me and my friend Ron, who's listening now, hopefully. We were talking about
Mhm.
that just a couple weeks ago, texting about that. There is something different that's between the eclipse happening, something weird. I'm not a superstitious person, but I'm not one of those people. Well, let me explain to you how illogical, zodiac and superstition things are. I make sound like I'm well read and technical like that, but I don't dare uh, tread across people's understandings or beliefs in that kind of a way. I mean, unless they start like trying to control people's bodies and bank accounts with the government based upon the zodiac, then we'll have a problem. But
Yeah.
there is something in the air in some ways. My uncle Jerry's remembering a lot of odd, terrible, dark, horrible things that happened in the 1960s to him, related to the Catholic Church. Hopefully, they're not listening. And just things like that where they're happening all out around the same time. And I am not going to say that I'm this massive person of faith. I'm not an atheist either, but I do believe that, especially with my current partner, Christina, over here, like she's a history major. If you do pay attention to the signs, the events, then I think 2024 is going to end up being a lot of turmoil, mostly just because of the election. The last two elections didn't, there was just fighting. I don't care, people, listen here. I don't care what you vote for out there, or you don't vote at all. Hell, I don't vote half the time anyway. I'm tired of this fighting. Seriously, red, blue, purple in the middle. Anarcho communist, communist, anarchist. I don't care. I care so little about politics now. It's not even funny. I'm like, just get along, please. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be more by the time we get to November. So much
Mhm.
political fighting to the point where it's going to get uglier. And a couple years ago, I went down to Tijuana, and my prediction for after 2024 is it's going to start getting more like developmental country around here. You like your water running without it being brown? Please get along unilaterally, politically, religiously. That includes anarchist, atheists. That includes the hardcore Christian people. That includes the left and the right and everybody in between, all the communists, all the socialists. If I left any out, just please, that because we're going to end up with, just cops running, taking bribes from whoever they feel like. You think it's bad now where they're gunning people down and kneeling on people's necks. That stuff's going to get worse. But by the end of 2024, I think we're going to get a clearer idea of how closer we'll be to being a developed, like kind of demoting down in the global scale of things, America being more of a developing country. It's funny because we were a developing country, then we became developed. And then that doesn't mean we just stay that way. It takes some fight and some communal way. Red balloon Winnie the Pooh, empty honeypot Winnie the Pooh. Please take that concept. That's my just ramblings and musings for the rest of the year.
Okay. Okay. Well, I want to say this is plug time now. So let's go ahead and get you to plug some of your works where people can find things at. Plug some of your artwork on your books and things like that. So
Oh,
let's see what you got.
yeah. All right. Roach Kind. Bernard, I imagine you'll have the link to this. Like,
Yes, and I will post the link to all of his works, and so you can go and definitely support him. I
so,
would love
Roach
that cover. Look
Kind.
at that cover.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm going to
And
show you
who
two
did
more.
it?
I'm going to show you two more things about this cover because this is
Okay.
also I like this cover this much. Don't worry, I'm not taking my shirt all the way off. I wouldn't do that to or for you all. So
There you go.
that
Look at that. So
I
the
got.
mask, yes.
I'm trying to get closer to it, but can you see
I,
it? That it's
I
the
can see
cover.
it. I
Yes.
love that artwork. Love
Now,
it.
person that designed this cover, Christina. Do you want to appear on camera? Okay, Christina. She's here. She doesn't want to appear on camera, but we
Okay.
will. Christina Carter, she's on there, and you look on Amazon on Roachkind. She is the person that is marked as the cover artist and the editor for it too. So she
Okay.
also she did a few other covers too. So I'll go with the SS Anthology. She did. Yeah,
Okay.
there we go. It's a collage of a lot of photographs that I've took because I am also been a photographer for 25 years.
Yes.
19, no, longer than that. Since 1998. That's 26 years.
Okay.
And I am no, I'm a great writer. I'm a very mediocre photographer. I know very good photographers though. It's my secondary art. It's fine.
Okay.
I know. I'm not gonna be like, hey, let me do your wedding for $150, and I'm gonna turn everything in black and white. No, I'm not that person. I'm not even gonna. I don't expect anybody to pay a penny for my photography. I just like doing it. But she was able to take a lot of my photography and make this into a collage all over this book. I think it's called a collage. Luchadors. I mentioned
I
Tijuana,
agree.
Mexico. There's a good Tijuana short story in there dedicated to Mick Foley. And like I said, if you want to see the future of America, if people don't get along, go down to Tijuana. That could be easily in a year if we're not careful.
Oh,
So Christina did that one, and Christina also did Poetry at the Zoom. Christine Hall. It's named after
oh,
Poetry at the Brew from Christine
yeah.
Hall. And I
I
changed it
see
to
that.
Poetry at the Zoom because we had our poetry sessions on Zoom for like 2 years for 2020 and 2021. So even though I was living here in Arizona, I was still very connected back then. So thank you, Christine Hall, for continuing to run that, and thank you, Silence Wordsmith, Sarah Pagel, aka she's taken over Poetry at the Brew. It's now called Writer's Wart. It's over there in Nashville. They just had it last night, I think. Yeah. So I'll try to get a plug for that too, an actual time and date for the next one. So there's that one. I mentioned Silver Water. My cousin Naomi McGowan did that one. This is the easy one. It's commercial. It's doesn't have cockroaches. It's not that challenging. It's all good. I had to prove that I could write something that wasn't just way out there. Wing is my redheaded stepchild. Naomi McGowan also did that one. Thank you very much, Naomi. Bedazzled Cockroach. They're humans in this Wing because it's a prequel, but it's basically what happens 2,500 years before Roachkind takes over. What are
Yeah.
we doing? What are we doing that made us all go extinct? That's what
Okay.
this is about. So we'll go
All
with
right.
Sanu, Christine Hall's Poetry at the Brew. A lot of us poetry people are in this book. I have 3 poems in here. And
Okay.
Monique Preyed Upon. I am an editor for Monique's book, Preyed Upon. So I'm
I
probably
got that. I got that in my collection over here. So yeah,
yes.
I got it next. I got to jump on your stuff, which I will do that ASAP.
Yeah.
Um, Now I want to say this here. I plan on bringing you in for a part 2,
Mm.
and on this part 2, I plan on doing something special. You know it, but I'm not gonna let my audience know.
Okay.
So I will do that. We're gonna work on the details off camera. But here's what I want to do. I want you to shout out where to find you, and then we will come back with the part 2 of this interview and what we're going to do special for. So it's on you.
Okay. Easiest way to find me. Google the word. You don't even have to type it in. You could just talk it into your phone. Roach kind. That is one word. ROACHKIND. Think humankind, mankind, roach kind. And that
Okay.
is the first like 12 things that come up. That is all me. It's on Amazon. Is
Okay.
where it's being sold. They got it on Goodreads, stuff like that too. All these other Amazon affiliated companies do have the book now too. Because long story short, I know my books looked a little big in size. You have to have a certain kind of format size in order to go into other venues, I guess. So that's what I ended up doing. So that's there. Sir Reina Lucio on Facebook. I have a clip for that, a link for that too. Sir, as in Sir Galahad, there's a hyphen. Reina, Reyna. So it's not spelled like in Espanol, Reina. And
Okay.
Lucio, Lucio. Sir Reina Lucio. Um, Last one, if you're looking straight for Monique's book, usually preyed upon. I noticed if I Googled that, hers is one of the first things to come up, but she's selling through Amazon too. So if you're looking for like, because we're kind of linked marketing wise, so that's why I was like, okay, cool. My goal with partnering with Monique all these years has been big in that we would be people who would never really read each other's preferences of stuff. But she's pointed out some amazing things. The work of Octavia Butler, a lot of Afrocentrism. I got some short stories, articles that I've been reading of that, and just overall, so like Nancy Sleen, just romance, being able to understand how to write romance better, how to actually have some kind of real connection with somebody, and vice versa. But Monique Gooch's work is very important, and I'm hoping that some people who would maybe read her stuff might kind of say like, well, whoa, this Serena Lucio guy was actually influenced by Monique too. It was like, yeah, and she was influenced by me too, because our influences, they need not look and sound just like us at all. And I think that's the biggest thing that we all had in our writers community between me, even you, Renard, Nancy Sleen, rest in peace, Monique, and Ron, and even Sonia. Hopefully she'll listen to this one too. Forgive me if I've forgotten a lot of people. We were a lot of people, and that's what made us work randomly in Hermitage. So I would say that just Roach Kind. Even if you're not into roaches, you can find other things written by me, other things written by Monique. And if you just Google Monique's work too, Preyed Upon, Amazon, then you can get towards my stuff too. I'd say the best way to get into this is going to be Silverwater for the novel and the SS anthology for just a smorgasbord of different genres. So
Okay.
those are all that. And last plug, I was on NPR. I'll send you all the link. It's called Bone Deep, is the podcast version of that. Um, what was that called? It was a podcast I was on for the Porch in Nashville that got turned into an NPR segment locally. So I was heard in Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia. It was that local affiliate. So that one tells the massively watered down version of a lot of the stuff that I just said here. This interview is much better, but we're at almost an hour here. NPR, they had to trim. Oh man, they had to trim a lot from what I was saying and everything. And I'm mad
Okay.
because I didn't have a book published back then. And
Mhm.
then it was like a year later I published Silverwater. I was like, man, I could have plugged that on NPR in a few different states here. That would have been a big opportunity, but it just didn't happen in order. That's all. So you just never give up, Who says what order things are supposed to happen in, unless we're talking about, I don't know, building a rocket or doing heart surgery, then yeah, order might matter with some of those kind of things, right? But
Yeah.
life events, just it's okay, if you had the baby and found the girl that you're gonna marry, and then I don't know, moved back to where you didn't like and then moved back again. I don't know. Just there's a lot of stuff going like that in our 30s now where we're
Yeah.
trying to undo or catch up from some things in our 20s, I guess. I'm going to be 40 in a few months. So we'll see how the next 10, 12, 40 years are going to go.
Well, hopefully they'll go pretty good for you. That's what I'm wishing for myself. I'm a little bit older, but I completely understand. Serge, I want to thank you. We're definitely going to do this again. There will be a part two coming up. This is for all the people who follow me. I'll make sure you have links to all the things that he wants you to follow him on. Definitely on this particular page. Again, stay tuned for the interview snippets and also stay tuned for the full interview of part one and part two. But again, I want to say thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for so much for inspiring me to continue to write just by hearing your voices. It makes me want to go to my computer right now and get some words down. So again, I want to say thank you so much. And shout out to everybody from the writers group from back in Hermitage, all the ones on West End I used to go to, and I think Sherry Wild, I think she was one of them. Shout out to her. I will make sure that I can get in contact with each and every one of you because you were all an inspiration to me, just like Serge was. Again, you stay safe in Arizona, and we will definitely speak again. And
All
this
right.
is based on characters. This is the interview, and then stay tuned for much, much more content, interviews, etc. Again, thank you, Serge, and we are out.
All right.